Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I am Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in business and beyond and look for solutions. And I'd like to introduce my guest to you today, Melanie Jones. Hello, Melanie.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. You can't tell that Melanie is very tall. At least she was tall.
We look the same height right now.
She was tall as you're right. She was tall as I was when I walked in, and I was like, "Oh, dang!" I don't know why I mentioned that, but it's just that was something that caught me off guard.
It's important for your mental health.
That's right.
I'm good for your posture. What it is.
Well, that's exactly right. So, well, besides from being 5'10", let me tell you about Melanie. She's the Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Leadership Institute, which is Utah's premier organization dedicated to elevating professional women through cohort-based training programs and corporate partnerships. I'll tell you a little bit more here, but that was one of the things that really wanted me to have you as a guest on the podcast. I love the opportunities that we're giving. Women need more opportunities, generally speaking, in business, and so I love that. Melanie is committed to advancing women's leadership. She serves as an ambassador for the Utah Women in Leadership Project and co-leads the organizational strategies spoke of a bolder way forward. She sits on the Thanksgiving Point Science Center Advisory Council and engages actively with her community as a frequent MC, panelist, and podcast guest. Outside of work, Melanie started and ran a community produce co-op for 6 years. She loves reading books from different countries, traveling with her husband and 4 children, and credits both travel and co-op for making her kids the least picky eaters she has ever met. Yes, I love that. I need to sick you on my grandson.
I mean, it's really one of my proudest life accomplishments. The fact that my kids will go to a restaurant in another country and order something weird.
That's awesome.
If I failed at everything else, exactly. I'm so cool for that.
That's just a win right there. That's a solid win.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, my oldest grandson, if there's not chips at the meal, then he's not eating. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, but
it's super normal.
And he's my grandson, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. His parents can take care of that. So, well, tell me about your interest in mental health in general. You were so gracious to come on the podcast, and we were talking earlier just about how this is such an important topic, and to you as well. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, mental health has definitely touched me and my family. I've had family members who have struggled severely with mental health, and also myself, after supporting so many of them through it, I was surprised to go through it myself a few years ago, to find myself in a spiral that got really pretty dangerous. To climb out of that and the work that it takes to climb out. In retrospect, it looks so easy. Like, why didn't I do that years before? I could have saved myself so much heartache. It really is, when you're in your head like that, so hard to pull yourself out, so hard to swim up to the top. But it's fresh air once you're done with that process.
It's something that most people never expect is going to be something that they face.
Right.
They're often surprised when it happens to them, especially people that are high achievers. They're surprised. Oh my gosh, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
But then when they get through it, I just think it's such a blessing because it gives you such great perspective, especially when working with others and a person yourself, like yourself, who's in a leadership position. And you're going to have people working with you all the time who are struggling. And for you to be able to say, I know what you're going through. Mm-hmm. I've been through something similar myself. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's awesome. So good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about your career a little bit and leadership training. So that's part of what you do. And so how do businesses develop a good culture or a culture of good mental health in their companies? What thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, I mean, you sent me some questions in the pre-read that I thought were really interesting around this. What creates a culture of mental health? What structures can organizations put in place? And it's interesting for me because you asked about burnout, and burnout is not necessarily the workload that you're carrying. That can be part of it.
Right.
But a lot of burnout is actually linked to a lack of appreciation. People have amazing capacity. Some people have elastic capacity to do more and more and more. You have to protect those kinds of people sometimes. But people have immense capacity to do work that they find meaningful and that they are appreciated for. And so the question is not, I'm in a startup, we have a lot to do and it's really crazy. Am I burning out my people? Yeah, maybe. But it's also, do they feel meaning in what they're doing? And are you adequately appreciating them for the work they put in? We have examples in the community of times that people didn't feel appreciated. The words of a CEO actually got them negative backlash from the community, not because they were making their people work too hard, but because they didn't appreciate the work that they were putting in for them. It's one thing for me as the CEO, for any leader, really, you're being compensated for your leadership. You're being compensated for your late nights and your 60-hour weeks or your 80-hour weeks. But to expect somebody on the ground level who's making not minimum wage, but
but
like
far less than the CEO
far
is
less
making.
than the CEO, to expect them to be as invested and not give them the appreciation, whether it comes in the form of adequate pay for the work that they're putting in or adequate verbal appreciation if you're not in that position, that's what burns people out.
I love that. And do you think that you talked about the different ways that appreciation could be shown? One, obviously, in kind of tangible means like adequate pay. Of course, some businesses are limited by, they'd love to pay every line level employee, $300,000 a year to have them be appreciated, but they can't do that. Do you believe that the act of the emotional appreciation, does that go almost as far? Do you think that people they'll just feel, I don't know, more satisfied in their employment?
Absolutely. I mean, if you feel like the work that you're doing means something, not only for, this product that you're building and the customers who buy it, but does my boss know how hard I'm sweating right now?
Yeah.
And do they appreciate it? Do they sympathize with it? Sometimes just, hey, I know you've been working really hard on this. Why don't you take the last half of Friday off?
Right.
If you don't have time for that, sometimes in the heat of things, that's when it's the worst, right? You're preparing for a conference. You can't give them time off, but are you showing them that what they do matters and that you see them and that you understand the strain that you're putting on them? And is there a path forward? Are you going to keep doing this to them forever? Or is there going to be time to breathe once this critical juncture is over? But it sucks when your boss just takes what you do for granted.
Right. And that's something that's so easy for a boss to do, right? Or a supervisor, is to kind of express that gratitude. I was thinking more about this idea of people feeling valued by what they do, and salary is a form of that, right? I mean, it's an expression of that. But I still think that someone could even be making, a very, very good amount of money, but not make that connection and still feel underappreciated by what they're doing. That connection doesn't always happen. And so the addition of this, of talking and relating and just, and saying, I appreciate what you do, I think that is probably one of the best things that an employer could do.
Goes all into the employer-employee dynamic as well. If you are expressing adequate appreciation, if you see your employees, if you recognize their work, then you also have more of an open door to give them feedback on things that you want to change. All of this is part of creating a psychologically safe environment. If somebody feels valued and appreciated, and then when you pick out something that you want them to correct, then they know that you're coming at it in the hope of their improvement, in the hope of their progression, that you have their best interests at heart. But if you don't appreciate them and value it along the way, then they feel attacked.
Yeah. And there's no other way really to do that except for having built that relationship. You could say in an email, when we have critical feedback for you, we're not attacking you, but that doesn't make any difference.
No, it doesn't.
It has to happen over time, and people having had experiences feeling like, yes, you do have their back. Yes, you are valued. Okay, so why is it so hard then for some people to express appreciation? Do you have any insight into that? Because some people are like, I'd rather just pay them $100,000 a year than go in and say, hey, Joan, you did a great job today,
Oh my gosh.
Any thoughts on
right?
that?
Like, how easy would it be?
It's so easy, but I think for some people it's not. Yeah.
For some people it's not. To those people, I would suggest, some training, some practice. You have to do this.
Yes.
This is important. And I will say we kind of criticize the younger generation for being entitled about things and for demanding flexibility or purpose or talking back or not having respect for authority or whatever. And we use the word entitled a lot. But how many of us as leaders are entitled as well? We think we're entitled to someone's best without giving them appreciation and
Right.
recognition of their value, why are we entitled to that? Employment is a value exchange. I'm bringing you my work.
Right.
You wanted me to work for you. That's why you hired me. And then on the other hand, you've got a boss who won't give appreciation to that person. When did they forget that they actually wanted this person, that maybe they fought for this person
Right.
and they got them, and now they're just going to walk away? This
Yeah.
sounds like an abusive relationship.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think maybe what happens is either it's an older generation or people that just have a similar thought process to that. They think, well, that value exchange, like you're talking about, they said, well, the value is I give you money.
Yeah.
And that's the value. And I don't need to give you anything else besides money. And I think that probably worked great for a long time in the history of the world. I think it's different now.
Yeah.
I think the people that are entering the workforce, they value other things. And of course they value the money as well, but they
can get money anywhere.
Exactly.
Especially with I know unemployment isn't as shiny as it
Sure.
was just a few months ago, but unemployment is still pretty low.
Right.
And so they could go get that money somewhere else, especially if they're in a high skilled position.
Exactly. And that's I think that money alone is not the value that most people in today's job market are seeking. And like you said, it's so easy just to be that person that says, thank you so much for what you did today. I really appreciate it. Or to notice them specifically on a specific task and say, what you did was so great with that. And it's really helped, advance the cause of the company. That's like a $50,000 bonus check, emotionally, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It really does have that effect.
And I read this report. I'm gonna cheat really quick. This is from OC Tanner. They did this global culture report back in 2020, and they listed the things that cause burnout. It's excessive work demands, no work-life balance, stress from financial insecurity, lack of fulfilling work, no advancement or opportunity, and underappreciation. And so if you flip all of those to the opposite, all that means is that in order to keep somebody happy, you just give them appreciation, you give them advancement, you give them opportunity, you give them fulfilling work, you make sure they're paid sufficiently for their role, you make sure they have work-life balance. I hate the term work-life balance, but let's move on. And then excessive work demands. I think another thing that can cause burnout and mental health challenges in the workplace is lack of definition in roles. If I don't know what is mine and what I have responsibility for, and you think that some of that is yours,
right,
and we're constantly battling or having some turf war, that causes friction within these relationships, the interpersonal dynamics in the workplace. And as a leader, you could really help your employees by just making sure all the lanes are defined and what people know they're accountable for and what they need to leave to somebody else.
And that's going to require ongoing communication and clarification, right? That's just that doesn't happen in the onboarding process.
Absolutely.
And you say, oh, by the way, here's your lane. 6 years later, you should still remember that, that sort of thing, right?
Right.
Because things change over time as well. I think, ongoing communication is probably one of the most significant things that a leader could do to help just to kind of improve that culture of mental health in their organization.
Absolutely.
And people want to be heard, and that two-way communication as well, right?
Yeah.
Not being entitled as a leader.
That's why exactly. That's why I love frameworks like Scrum for project management. Even if you're not all working on the same project, to have a Scrum board, to know who's working on what every single sprint, whether it's 1 week or 2 week or 1 month, to have your daily stand-ups and just ensuring that communication is flowing. It prevents a lot of wasted work. Wasted work is a huge factor in feeling whether your work is actually valuable.
Right.
If you feel like you built something and then it just got thrown in the trash, that impacts you and whether you have joy in your work. So something like Scrum, where you know all along the path, who's doing what is expected of me, is it working, is it not?
Right.
Because you get that constant feedback loop, and it's in a structure that allows for it without being critical.
There's tools out there that people can use. So instead of just having to be at someone's desk every 5 minutes to update them on how the project is going and increase that communication,
Absolutely.
we have tools that people can just go to. That's awesome. I love that. Well, tell me about, I want to talk about, in your experience, the difference between women and men approaching mental health and leadership and stuff like that. Because obviously you have a lot of experience just personally and in working with women in those capacities. Do you see a difference? Do you uh, talk about that?
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting question. In my experience, and this is a sample size of one,
Right.
I find a bigger difference to be between people who have personally experienced a mental health
Mm,
challenge and those who have not. Certainly, there are differences between the ways that men and women communicate about these things, and there are social norms at play as well. I think that it's harder for a man to express some of these things openly. On the other hand, when they do, they're more likely to be called brave
mm.
and vulnerable. And how connected he is. What a connected leader. Whereas on the other hand, if a woman shows that vulnerability, we have to be really careful that we're not perceived as weak
Hmm.
or as trying to make other people take care of us. And so what I have found is when speaking about things that are difficult, for me, they have to be fully processed things. If I'm still emotional about it, then I might come off as weak. And that might not be fair.
Right.
The fact that you can get emotional and we'll be like, he's so brave.
Yeah.
And the fact that if I get emotional, it's like, oh, is she okay?
Yeah.
You know, that's the world that we live in. But I have found more strength and more power personally if I'm expressing things that I have already worked through.
Yeah. I loved at the beginning of your answer when you talked about that there might be less difference between men and women as there are differences between people who've been personally touched and not personally touched by mental health, that those
Yeah.
who have tend to have a greater sensitivity in general, regardless of their gender, right?
Absolutely.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I think we live in a society now where there's hardly anyone who hasn't been touched by this. And if they think they haven't, they should probably just look a little closer,
Yeah.
at their family tree, or maybe talk to one of their siblings or something and say, hey, if this is something you've gone through, and I think everyone's going to find that they know someone personally who's had a significant encounter with mental health.
Yeah. And it circles, right? So if you saw a neighbor go through it versus if a child or a parent went through it versus if you yourself went through it.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
people in the very center, if you've gone through it yourself, I have seen leaders of my own who have gone through it themselves, who are much more empathetic, who know what to say and what not to say, who know what other people need to make it through this in the workplace dynamic versus those who were maybe in an outer ring and they can be sympathetic, but they don't know exactly how to help. And as you keep going outward, the tools that somebody has based on their experience just get fewer and fewer. I don't recommend that everybody go through mental health
Right.
challenges in order to gain those tools in the middle. But you can also listen to podcasts and
Yes.
other people's stories. Sometimes it feels safer to people to not go through this with somebody who's in front of them,
Right.
but to process what this experience might be like through storytellings. Even movies can help. Can you see something and relate to it and go,
Right.
oh, I wonder if this is what my team member is going through?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite anecdotes I heard years ago was about a man who's walking down the street and he falls into a hole that's so big, so deep he can't get out of. So he's yelling for help as people are walking by, and his doctor walks by and he says, "Doc, help, I'm stuck in the hole." And so she writes a prescription and throws it in the hole. And then his therapist walks by and he says, "Sally, I'm stuck in this hole, help, help." And she writes down a few inspirational quotes and throws it in the hole. And then his best friend walks by and he says, "Jim, I'm stuck in this hole." And Jim jumps in the hole. And he says, "Jim, are you stupid? Now we're both stuck in this hole." And Jim says, "Yeah, but I've been down here before and I know the way out."
Mm-hmm.
I love that because
Wonderful.
there's so much that can happen when we have, like you said, either having been directly affected or by just being exposed to it through education and other things, just kind of learning what it's like to be in those situations. And whether we go looking for it or not, it's going to affect us.
Yeah.
Even just like if we look at mental health like physical health and how it's on a continuum and say, I don't have to have cancer to just be sick, right? And some days I'm sick, even though I may have never had cancer. With your mental health, there's some days when you're more depressed than others or more
Yeah.
anxious than others, even though maybe you don't have a clinical diagnosis. So you know what it feels like to be down or unmotivated or
Yeah.
frightened or something like that. So
Yeah. the part that you may not recognize is how it feels to feel like you can't climb out of it.
Yes. Yes.
And I love the anecdote that you shared because his friend jumps down with him. I think that we know by this point from all the research that one of the best ways to get out of anything like this, including mental health, depression, addiction, it's connection, right? And the hard part about it is when you're feeling like this, you cut off connection on your own. You feel isolated. You isolate yourself. You feel ashamed. And you don't feel like you can express all of these things, that somebody won't understand, that they'll think you're crazy. They won't know what to do. You don't want to make people feel awkward. And if you're a pleaser or a high achiever, then feeling like you're a burden to other people is really difficult.
It's doubly worse.
Yeah. But it's the connection that saves us.
100%. I'm looking at my questions and you're talking about so many of the things and I love it. We're just going on with we're in mind meld right now. So let's finish with this one. Let's just talk about digital content, marketing, things like that, social media. How do we leverage that for good? Because there's a lot of negative that's happening out there. Do you think, is it too late? Can we leverage it for good? What are your thoughts on that?
It's so bad for us, right? All of these things are tools that can be used for good or evil, right?
Right.
All of them. And yet we as humans tend to gravitate toward the negative end of it more than anything. There are people who, when they are depressed, they use this. They use social media for the dopamine hit. They scroll, they doom scroll, and they think it'll make them feel better, but it actually makes them feel angrier and more separate, even though we're supposedly connecting. But if we were to use it as a tool, I think that we have to hedge against our natural inclinations.
Right.
So first of all, putting limits on your phone that you don't override. I can be really bad about that. Just click 15 more minutes,
exactly,
15 more minutes. But like having a block on your phone that at least flags your behavior for yourself. Are you aware how much time you're spending on that? And then I think it's really important to curate your feed and teach your algorithm.
Yes.
And so if you are constantly seeing things that make you angry, then that's something that you've got to consider. How am I going to reprogram this? How many cat videos do I need to watch in order for this extremist stuff to stop showing up in my feed? A few years ago, I was wanting to be a little more out of my bubble, out of my own echo chamber, and I created a specific Twitter account. I don't know if I'd recommend this today or not, but it's what I did. Created a specific Twitter account where I followed every politician from every side of every issue across the country, random representatives from Kansas and New Jersey and senators from everywhere. And instead of reading things where their words were interpreted, I just started reading their words from every side. And I felt some things on some topics shift for me just by seeing what some people actually said. There were people that I thought I liked that it turns out I don't. There were people that I thought I disagreed with that I had more in common with than I thought. So that was a really interesting experiment. But the point in that story isn't that everybody should do this. The point in that story is the intention of it. So whatever platform you're on, are you being intentional about it? Are you aware of how it impacts you from a psychological standpoint? Is it impacting you for the good or the bad? And is there something you can do to fix it, or do you just need to get off? I canceled my Facebook account a few years ago. I'm just not on Facebook anymore. LinkedIn happens to be my profile or my platform of choice because with there's some level of control to it with no one able to be anonymous. And also your employer can see everything you're doing.
That's right.
And so it might tone down your rhetoric just a little bit. So that's my preference. I'm a little on Instagram, but while I have learned things on the balance, would I say that it's more positive or negative? Probably negative.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just be conscious about it. There's good stuff out there
That's
too.
Right.
There's stuff that helps people find community, that helps people not feel alone, that makes you go, because especially sometimes when you're having a mental health challenge, it feels so unique. I'm the only person who has ever gone through this and the only person who has ever felt this way. And then you find a community online that you can be vulnerable with because they don't live down the street from you and they're not in control of your job and you're not married to them. So that, all of these things that you worry about, you can build it, but you have to be careful too.
Right. Being intentional about it. Not, instead of just moving into the house that someone built for you, building that house from the ground up, right? And saying, this is what I want in my house. This is how I want it to look.
Right.
I love that. Great advice. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for coming in today. You're very insightful. Thank you for all the good that you're doing here in Utah. And it's just a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks so much for having me.
And thanks everyone for listening. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.